kids and put them on a chart. Are they helping or are they hindering? And start working to mitigate that, because our children need us to be their advocates. And that's what I've seen you do so powerfully, Quinn, is you have been like a mega advocate for your children. And once you got a taste of that advocacy, it was like you were in a sprint then. You know, they couldn't catch you, because every time the institution, whatever it is, the mental health network, the education network, tried to bring out their big guns with you, you're like, no, I'm representing my client, which is my child. And, you know, you're going to have to do better than just say, this is how it's done. Not good enough. Yeah, nah.
Yeah, nah. Oh, yeah. Yep.
Hello, Quanta folks, and welcome to another Faark the Shoulds podcast, Little Sister Alchemising Education. I'm here with beautiful, curious Quinn. Hello, Quinn.
Oh, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I love these conversations.
I am Jodi from QuantiMama. I often forget to introduce myself.
And I'm Curious Quinn.
You are Curious Quinn, the curious one, as always. We're so excited to have another conversation. There's so much juice in alchemising education. And this time, what we're going to talk about, which really stemmed out of a conversation you had with some other parents. And we were just remarking on, we just take a lot of our stuff for granted because we've just made these decisions and gone with the flow, and as they've felt right, we've gone, oh, that was the right decision. And so there's not that contrasting sort of, I guess, push and pull of, is this the right decision, is this the wrong decision? Because when you make the right decision, it just lands and everything flows. And at some point you look up and go, holy crap, that's been really good. So circling back around, you're having dinner with more amazing parents of teenagers, and you were sharing something that was going on for your family by comparison to what was happening for their family, and that has brought us to our topic, which is that parents have the choice.
Yeah,
the
parents get to decide.
The parents get to decide, and so it's about examining this interesting situation we have in society where parents are constantly handing over decision making to people in white coats, people with degrees, people with so-called authority, often overriding what is happening for them intuitively at their heart, what's happening in front of them, and really overriding that inner voice. And, you know, the real question is, how the F did we end up here?
Yes, absolutely.
How do we end up here? And it started, I think, a long time ago, probably around when we were looking to conceive and certainly looking to birth, that we started handing over decision-making about how we want to even conceive children and bring them into the world, and we started handing over to an external authority. But no greater effect has there been than the current, I would call it an epidemic of mental health in our kids.
Oh, absolutely.
Who are in systems that are not right for them. And so I guess circling around to that, do you just want to share a bit about that conversation and I suppose the light bulb or the seed planting that happened when you were sharing your experience in comparison to these mums of affected children?
Yeah, I think it is interesting. The more we talk about our experience, the more people are becoming really interested in how did we do it, why did we do it, and how's it going? Like, how's it all going? And you know, they all start the conversation with, how unhappy their children are, or how there's a part of their daily life where they're just not enjoying themselves, or they're struggling, or they're having trouble being motivated, or they're not being lit up. So
what are the common, like, are there certain things that people are listing as essentially indications of that lack of, I guess, contentedness in their kids?
Certainly getting them to school, just getting them up and getting them motivated to get to school.
So they're slow to rise, they're slow to get ready, there's difficulty with getting them in the car or getting that morning rhythm started. And I guess you could almost argue, certainly teenagers, perhaps school hours don't reflect where teenagers are at. They seem to naturally want to sleep in. I'm noticing that with my emerging and now teenager is that their day seems to start at about, as in they get out of bed around 9 a.m.
Yes.
But because they're homeschooled, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's right.
Because their learning goes into the evening.
That's right.
So there must be a bit of that. But people must also have a sense that there's also like a level of anxiety with kids even being motivated to go to school, and so that's what they're sort of observing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, you know, we want our kids to be able to jump up and be excited about their days. You know, we want them to be able to sort of, you know, want to be going to the places they're going to. So, for example, I'm just sort of thinking even now this morning when, you know, my son was heading off to his, you know, 1 day a week work, he got himself up. He was motivated to get himself up. I sort of thought, oh my gosh, I haven't sort of checked if he's awake. He was already up. He was dressed. He was getting ready. So, you know, I think when you're seeing children who are struggling to get themselves motivated and are not looking forward to their days, and I think that's a really key indication. And then, of course, when they get home, how exhausted they are. And we spoke a little bit about this, you know, having to then go from school, being exhausted, being depleted, to then going to after-school activities. I think it's just the absolute exhaustion that's coming with that. And then they're trying to escape. So they're trying to do things to escape out of that state of overwhelm. And I think certainly there's an acceptance that kids can stay up and watch TV or be on their screens, and so then there's that cycle of getting up in the morning for sure. But I think it's just about kids also being so disengaged. Like the parents are hearing their kids going how unhappy they are with the topics that are being discussed at school, and the things they're being asked to do, and you know, the boring activities and the assemblies and the, you know, just some of the excursions that they go on or whatever it might be, where they're just going, oh, it's so boring. They just, you know, they're all sort of saying how they're just so bored and disengaged, and you're kind of going, well, there's a problem there. Then, you know, we're sending them into these environments day in, day out. So while I was having dinner with these lovely women the other day, and one of them was sort of saying, you know, my son, when I sort of mentioned how my son was homeschooled, she goes, oh, really? My son's been trying to negotiate with me around maybe only going to school 3 days a week and staying home 2 days a week. I said, oh, really? She said he's so interested in his music. He wants to, you know, create all these things, and he's got these little apps that he's using to help create music and use them for themes or to put up behind videos. And he's got a little sort of a side business going already, and I think was year 9, she was saying, and he's wanting to teach other teenagers how to use this piece of equipment and what to do. And, you know, already he's being paid a small amount of money to create this music for other people, and then he can teach others how to do it as well. And so she said he's been talking to me for ages about wanting to only go down to school 3 days a week. And when I sort of told her what my son was doing and all the different things that sort of have basically come out of, I mean, I never expected them. I didn't know what he was going to do when he homeschooled. I just knew that we had to wait and give it time for him to get bored and for him to kind of unravel all of the expectation before he found the things that lit him up. And so here was this lady telling me about how her son's already found it.
Yeah, which is
He's
remarkable.
already found it.
Yeah.
You know, it's already there, and yet she's questioning.
Yes.
She's questioning the decision.
You want to let off fireworks for her and go, this is amazing. Like, he already knows he's got this creative outlet that's actually productive. You can see that, I mean, I think the see one, do one, teach one model of life is so nourishing because you get to learn, then you get to create, and then you get to impart knowledge and grow community.
Yes,
like, it's just,
it's
like
empowering
the meaning of life.
for them.
It's brilliant. And how it fills you with a sense of, I guess, wholeness and, you know, productivity and
purpose.
like all those things, exactly, purpose. And so the gift that he already has that, and the negotiation. And I think that what was really interesting when you were mentioning about that conversation was her mind being somewhere between stretched and blown
Yes.
about the concept that she could actually agree to such an outrageous proposition as dropping down to 3 days a week from 5, so he could do something that he's clearly gifted at.
And he was smart enough to be able to fit his work into 3 days. He'd already said that to his mum. Mum, I could do this in 3 days, and then I could do the other 2 days doing the other things. So he was still continuing to go ahead with his education. He could just get it done quicker. You know, these kids are really, and then he's so motivated by it.
Yeah.
And I just kind of think, what a gift this is. It's actually making your job easy. And this is where, as parents, we second guess what we're doing and the decisions that we're making when
Yes.
our children are there in front of us actually saying, this is what I want to do.
Yes.
But because it goes against, I guess, the society's norm
Yes.
and the structure that's been created, and because there's this really big, I don't know, is it like we feel like we can't make those decisions for our children?
Yeah.
And that we're not qualified to make those decisions?
That's a big thing for parents
It's
of homeschoolers.
huge.
They always say, am I qualified to do this?
Yeah.
You know, and there's this worry that someone's going to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, you're not allowed to do it. You know?
Absolutely.
Which, you know, I can understand that level of anxiety, and then somewhere in the, you know, the anarchist part of me just says, look, you know, bugger off. I actually know what's best. But in all honesty, I do like being a rule follower too, so I can understand that impetus to want to follow, you know, the main crew. But I think that, I mean, as we've talked about very briefly, school's terribly inefficient. And so when you've got a kid that clearly can create efficiencies within that, and so I guess the quick question is, if she was going to say to you, is that possible, you know, to do school 3 days a week and have 2 days off? We know the answer is
yes, absolutely.
Completely.
And it's interesting because, as you say, school's inefficient, but they try to run with efficiency. So
Yes.
there's this real opposite situation going on, so that they want to make things as easy as possible for themselves.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's really inefficient for each individual learner. So, and I think what I've sort of discovered is that we can make the school system fit our kids, and who are they to tell us as parents what's right for our children?
That's right.
And I sort of said to this lady that you can do it. You absolutely can do it. The school won't like it.
Yeah.
And I think because there's a fear associated with, well, if we do it for one child, it actually sets a precedent for another child, and that then takes their own efficiency from a business model away.
Yeah, it creates a workload, but
Yes.
ultimately, exactly borrowing back from what your mum would say about, you know, a child learning something.
Yes.
If the environment is not meeting the needs of the child, and you know they're learning far more in their time off, then that's quite, you know, illustrative of the fact that it's a system that needs modification, right?
Totally.
And I think that there's definitely an opportunity here. Look, the first people that take these steps are always going to feel lonely because
Yes.
they look around them and no one else is doing it. But what that does is it creates a huge amount of courage for those around, because when they are in the quiet moments, they look at their kids and they know that something's off slightly. And one thing that I think I've probably talked about before, but I'm constantly revisit, is how anxious do your children need to be for you to pull the trigger on something
Absolutely.
new? I mean, God forbid, if you are going to wait until they are suicidal and you think that that is an acceptable way to raise children, then you have been hoodwinked by society into giving away the mental health of your children. They don't need to be that desperate. And if you've got an articulate child who's clearly functioning and thriving in whatever sort of, you know, love activity they're doing, and it's clearly the right pathway for them, you know, do give yourself the opportunity to reimagine what their rhythm could look like, because you could even just give it 6 months and see if that makes a difference, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just find it amazing that we override our innate intelligence over and over again, and I just think about how much energy we put into you know, even being pregnant and thinking about I'm not eating ham and I'm not going to have that egg and I won't have any sushi and like, that's right. I mean, cheese is delicious. But like all of that energy of all that restriction, all about having a really healthy baby, and then you've got this child in front of you who can actually articulate what they need and you override it. And I'm like, why did we let that happen? Why are we not fiercer?
I don't know. It's really interesting, though, because you kind of think there's we celebrate a lot of people's success for those who have had so many failings in their life or who have come from nothing.
Yes.
And they become successful. So, I mean, what is it? Bill Gates and, you know, who are some of the other big people who never finished school or were high school dropouts, but they've created all these amazing things in the world. So we celebrate them.
Yes.
So why don't we stop and go, well, our children could be the same. They don't have to follow the same path as everybody else.
Yes.
I remember watching another family, and this was another inspiration for my journey as well, was another family whose child was really struggling in school, just started year 7, and they ended up taking her out of school to homeschool. She's now at the age of my daughter, so year 12, year level, and she's an amazing baker. Like she's got her own bakery and she's out there baking because she loved doing that. Now, they said the greatest thing they ever did was pull her out of school because she was miserable.
Yes.
She was unhappy. She didn't fit in. She didn't enjoy it. She was so down on herself, you know. And I remember thinking, gosh, good on them.
Yeah.
You know, and it took me another 4 or 5 years before I realised actually I probably knew it at the time, and I did know it at the time, but I just didn't have that courage to say, actually, we need to back our kids. We need to look at their mental health. We need to look at what's working for them. We need to listen to them about what they're trying to tell us.
Yes.
And not keep shoving them down because we're afraid of what other people are going to think of us as parents.
Well, and also there's definitely that, but also this idea that it's a permanent change.
Yeah,
like
that's
firstly,
right.
There's a whole bunch of belief systems that are just absolute BS to do with this stuff.
Yeah.
Number one is it's a permanent change.
Yes.
Number two is they're going to get left behind.
Yes.
And number three is they'll miss their social networks.
Yes.
And I just kind of go, firstly, you can find people anywhere with social networks.
Yeah.
That's quite possible.
Yeah.
And it's not age related in that sense. It's just about meeting like-minded souls.
Yes.
The other thing is, how can you be left behind when you're in a complete love space of creation and learning? And then the other thing is, why do they have to be mega successes?
Well, that's
like,
right.
I just kind of go, there are families out there that are just glad to have their children alive. Like
And
it's
they're
been,
happy.
that's right. And or even if they just have a sense of peace and serenity. And I just think we are setting ourselves up. I mean, even if you talk about some of these early school leavers or non-finishers that turn to mega successes, I mean, I think success is a complete mirage and those people aren't necessarily happy anyway.
No, that's right.
But, you know, I'd be happy just living mortgage-free, having enough for all the beautiful food that I love, having amazing people around me who are just so heart-based, and that's what I want for my kids. I just want them to be able to live in community, have a sense of purpose, a sense of wholeness, and a sense that they can always listen to their innate wisdom. And that's the benchmark I think we need for our kids.
Yes.
So then we look around the environment that we find our kids in, whether that's being super busy with lots of extracurricular activities, whether that's in social groups that don't nourish them and just bring out these really asaholic kind of behaviours and thought patterns, whether they're in obviously a school environment that doesn't foster that creative juice that they have inside of them. You know, look at all of those things, including tech. How much tech are they doing? Are they on social media sites that are just so corrosive to mental health? I mean, they really are, unless you moderate them or have a real sense of self. And most teenagers do not have a sense of self, do they? No. So we've all been there. Like, that's the whole point. This is a stretchy time when you're trying to work out who you are. And so I think what we want to say within this conversation is, parents, back yourselves.
Totally.
Find some quiet space and look, almost like some kind of forensic exercise at all of the elements and put them on a chart. Are they helping or are they hindering? And start working to mitigate that, because our children need us to be their advocates. And that's what I've seen you do so powerfully, Quinn, is you have been like a mega advocate for your children. And once you got a taste of that advocacy, it was like you were in a sprint then. You know, they couldn't catch you, because every time the institution, whatever it is, the mental health network, the education network, tried to bring out their big guns with you, you're like, no, I'm representing my client, which is my child, and, you know, you're going to have to do better than just say, this is how it's done. Not good enough. Yeah, nah.
Yeah, nah. Oh, yeah. Yep. Nope.
So what does that feel for you right now? Because I think this is the kind of stuff where parents sit in that space and go, how the F do I even start with this?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, where I would come from is, if I hear myself saying it from a should perspective, I would faark it, obviously, because it becomes a framework for me. If it's a should, it gets faarked. And so then we look at the alternatives and the options for doing nothing and all of those, you know, things that are not apparent in the first instance of when you're presented with one option. But for you, when you sit in that space, I mean, is it just feeling like it's coming naturally to you now?
It's getting easier. I think not comparing yourself to others. That, you know, comparison is the art of joy. You know, is a thief of joy, should I say? It's just when we compare ourselves to others and we think, well, we should be doing what should. Yeah. We you know, we're worried that what they're doing is different to what we're doing. But what I'm learning is that actually we admire when other people have the courage to step outside, and we go, oh, wish I could do that.
Yeah.
And so I'm realising that we have to run our own race, and we have to stick to what's right for us. And when I feel like I'm gaining more strength and more momentum and more courage, the more I step outside and do what's right for us as a family, or for my children, or even for me, the more I'm realising that actually other people are in admiration of that courage that I'm demonstrating. In those moments, there's a lot of fear.
Yes.
Although the fears doesn't control me as much anymore. Like that fear of, will I get it right? Will I make a mistake? I'm recognising that we actually also therefore have to be the example to our children. We need to show them that we make decisions, and sometimes we'll get them wrong.
Yeah.
Or sometimes they won't work out the way we hope that they will.
Yeah.
But there's a real admiration coming from other people as they watch and observe you, and they go, oh, I wish I could do that.
Yes.
It's like, well, you can.
Yes.
You can. And it depends on what's driving you. Is it fear of what people are going to say?
Yes.
Or is it for the love of your children and their future?
That's right. And I also think that probably if people want a framework of where to start, just start talking to your kids.
Oh, absolutely.
But that might take time, because if you've forced a child to do shit they don't want to do, and like school refusal or hesitation is a classic,
it's
right?
Massive.
That kid has the experience of not being heard already.
Absolutely.
They're not being heard in their safe space at home. They're not being heard at school where they're, you know, perhaps even put into a box of misbehaving because the environment's not fit for them, and no one thought to actually check with the fish if the, you know, water was right for them, you know. So it's that constant thing of this child hasn't had the experience of being heard. And so if we then want to start establishing a conversation with our children, which is, I'm going to listen to you, there might be some time where they need to trust that, you know, because they might say, no, probably not, because you haven't to date. So I think that that's a great place for parents to start. If you have any sense that there is, you know, anything that's feeling wobbly for your kids, and there'll be lots that they are not telling you about.
Absolutely.
Trust that. Even the well-adjusted kids don't tell their parents certain things.
Well, there's a real fear of letting your parents down.
Yes.
You know, I don't want them to feel like I've failed or that I'm not good enough for you, or that I'm not meeting your expectations, or that I'm putting stress on the family. But yeah, my experience also is that school refusal is a really key indicator that there's something not working for your child.
Yes.
And it can take a long time to get to what it is.
Yes.
And it's interesting because even within the school system, we found that we were being told, oh, we don't want school refusal. We just got to keep them coming. Let's keep them coming. Let's keep bringing them back in. What can we do to get her into class? What can we do to get her here today? And it's like, well, actually, we just need to listen to the fact that she's not feeling safe right there, right now. She's not feeling supported. She's not feeling heard.
Yes.
So I think it's a really big key indicator, school refusal, and we have to, as parents, as you said, tune in to what they're looking for. You know, it's like when they start talking, and I certainly learnt this one because I had one who just didn't want to share anything with me because of, you know, a bit of shame and not wanting to feel like she let us down. And, you know, when I stopped talking about it and stopped encouraging her to get to school, or stopped needing to push her into the system, eventually she just started talking.
Yeah.
And I had to listen to that because I thought, well, what's the point in continuing to push? It serves no purpose. Serves no purpose. So I had to block out the noise of the school's fear of school refusal.
Yes.
And their desire to have attendance rates and their desire to not let school refusal happen for all students. You know, there's this fear of it rolling into everybody else. Yeah. And I think it's happening a lot, but then parents are worried about, oh, I don't want my child to be seen as school refusal. So there's then this impact of perhaps our own ego or our own social pressures and expectations. Absolutely. So then we put the pressure on the kids to sort of, come on, you got to go, you got to go, because in the back of your mind you're thinking, I'm failing. Yeah. And I can visualise one particular little girl at the moment who has school refused for so long and yet is constantly appeasing the parent. Yeah. Okay, in she goes. Yeah. So miserable, so unhappy. But the parents are afraid to let her have her own voice. And that, you know, honestly, this particular child is just going down such a path of despair because the parents aren't listening to her. Yeah. And when does that child ever get to learn to listen to themselves and trust their own judgment? So we're not teaching them that either.
No, and I think at what benefit?
It's no benefit. It's just a disadvantage to that child and their sense of self.
Yes. I mean, you can see the extreme situation unfolding within that example. And absolutely. So, I mean, I just trust in those situations that that restitution will come when it's meant to come.
It will.
You know, but clearly for those parents, they need a more extreme situation to break the patterns of being good little girls and boys that send their children off despite how their children
Which
feel.
is what I was, I must say. I did that.
Yeah.
You know, I did that.
Yeah.
And I kept questioning it within myself. I kept thinking, should I be pushing? This feels really hard. There's something not right. And we had to have that big sort of blow up or that big situation that made us go, okay, we've pushed too hard. Yeah. We've expected too much. We just had to back away.
And I think part of the great success and admiration I have of you is that you don't sit in that space of blame. Like, I know that you went there for a little while of blaming yourself and just going, shoulda, woulda, coulda, done it differently. But it's such a pointless emotion. Like, yes, you need to experience it and accept it, and then you must move on from that, whether you want to forgive yourself or not, but you must allow for that to just be as it is and recognise around you that you've made a change. And I think that's what I want to say to parents out there. If you feel that there is this slight wobbliness within your household around this stuff, just start by making a change in listening to your children or creating the opportunity for them to share with you, and that be the first thing. It doesn't mean your whole life's going to completely change in rhythm, but it does mean that you are reprioritising what must be reprioritised, because children everywhere are suffering.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a generation of mental health that will be solved by big pharma and a whole lot of conversations that are non-productive.
Yeah.
And, you know, that is not a bright future. So the change must happen now, and that will be the bravest move you ever take, is taking that first small step to realigning priorities. And so I think that's where I really just want to leave people with that opportunity and invitation. We're not prescriptive, but for crying out loud, apply some of the energy that you had when you were pregnant and that intention of nurturing that child.
Yes.
Apply that now.
Yep. Absolutely. Listen to your hearts.
Listen to your heart.
And listen to your kids.
Very Roxette of you. There's only people of a certain age that know that song.
That's a concern.
All right, beautiful Quanta folks, we've loved this conversation. Join us again for more alchemising education on Faark the Shoulds podcast. Curious Quinn, you are glorious. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.